New York man sentenced to life for killing a couple in Manchester on Christmas in 2015 is yet again appealing his conviction. David Marble, who was 29 at the time of the murders, was convicted of killing 26-year-old Bonnie Royer and 35-year-old Eric Williams.
In 2019, the Maine Supreme Judicial Court rejected an appeal. In a hearing that began this morning, Marble is again challenging the conviction.
Marble's current attorney asked questions of Marble's attorneys who represented him at trial. These included concerns with lack of objecting to leading questions, investigating DNA evidence found near the scene of a crime, and not looking into a potential suspect who was only known by a street name.
The only thing the lawyer seemed to have regrets about was twice during the trial, Marble was referred to as D-Money. One attorney said in hindsight they could have asked for a mistrial, but all the other concerns would have weakened their case.
But to keep repeating objection after objection on evidence that is not crucial or is going to come out anyway makes us look desperate, and we don't want to look desperate.
The hearing is scheduled to last 3 days in Augusta. Proceedings are set to continue tomorrow.